Hey, let's go. Why would you do that? They're going to go home and their responsibility is to get their stuff done. And I tried to explain to them. I said, "Yeah, but they're not going to.
Right.
That kid who is that kid who's going to get it done is not the one who needs study hall.
Right.
He's the guy that I got tutoring the guys who need study hall.
Right.
It's those other guys that can make it
Yeah.
but won't. We went for like a 3-4 year period in there somewhere in 8 years, 4 years in a row, where we didn't have one kid ineligible at any point in the season. And
That's
I
got to be a
attribute
record. That's got to be a
well,
record.
and I attribute it thoroughly, to the fact that, but it took a ton of work. I mean, it took a ton of work on my part. We had another coach who was on campus who shared that duties with me, or I shared that duties with him because he did a lot of work on it. But it took a lot of time to sit. If you've ever sat in a classroom after school or at sixth period athletics with a group of athletes and try to keep them focused, I mean, people go, how'd
You
you
know
do
the
it? I go,
stories of me at 2:00 in the morning. Like,
yeah, because they were. Why did they? Well, what was the answer, Chuck? The answer was they were scared to death of what was going to happen to them if
that's
they
true.
goofed up.
That's right.
And I'd come walking in a room and I'd have somebody else sitting in there, and I'd come walking in the room and they'd go, "Oh shit," and they'd shut up. And the guy watching would take me aside and go, how come, I can't get them. They won't listen to me. They won't stay focused.
Yeah.
Well, it's because it was day after day after time, and there were consequences. And if you were one of those guys sitting at a desk on the football field watching practice
Yeah.
and being told until you get your missing assignments in, you're
Right.
not coming back to practice.
Yep.
And guys would go, "Coach, we need that guy." And I'm like, "I know we need that guy, but he's going to be ineligible in week 7 or 8, and we're not going to have him for the crunch time anyways."
Yeah.
You
He's
know,
not, he's
and
not
it
gonna
just
do it. He's gonna get a 60% on the field just like he did in math class.
and that's what's going to happen. And those, eventually the kids would be working real hard to make sure that those guys were getting, did you get your stuff done, putting pressure on them, and it takes constant reaffirmation that I'm not
Right.
going to let up, or your coach is not going to let up, and this is part of the program. But again, not even everybody, at school understood that, so it's a
I love there's some things at Villa Park that really are similar. One of the things is that at some point they sort of did away with the scholar all league or all academic team kind of concept in the Century League or whatever, and
right.
apparently they did away with it, and Villa Park decided that was ridiculous, and they continue to produce the patches and stuff that said scholar athlete for the and we have that, and it's a very strange thing because the banquets at the parochial school are so incredible, and we would have banquets for softball, and an administrator would come in and say, "Hey, Tom, how you doing?" It could be an assistant principal that time, it could be the principal that time, depending on if they liked your sport or not. I guess there was a lottery on which banquet each administrator was going to,
Right.
and the guy would come up to me and say, "Tom, would you mind if we do scholar athlete before dinner?" And it's like, and I kind of didn't understand what he was doing, and the guy goes, "Yeah, So he'd get up there and go, "Okay, we'd like to thank Principal so-and-so for coming." And he'd come up, he said, "Hey man, great season. We had, 7 of the 9 starters were all academic team. And this is the scholar athlete of the year. And this person's going to be up in the running for the school scholar athlete of the year. It's a big deal." And he would hand out the thing, he would shake hands, and dinner would be served, and he would sneak out and not even know who the MVP of the team was, which I thought was a
Right.
fantastic message. And it wasn't meant to be. They were just tired of going to boring ass, nobody wants to go to a banquet. But the other
Yeah.
thing, and then Coach Ansich, Dushan Ansich, has pub on his helmet. So I don't know if you can see Kyle's helmet right there, but
Yep.
there's stars on his helmet, right? There's all
Hmm.
kinds of stars on his helmet. And at Villa Park, the stars on the helmet are for A's at the grade check. So if you have 2 A's on your grade check, then you get 2 stars on your helmet. So there's some guys on the sidelines,
Yeah.
the super nerds, the 5'4" guys that have their helmets look like they're all American. And there's
And
some
that,
there's some running back guys that have 2 stars on the helmet, even though they scored 15 touchdowns. And really, so they've done a pretty good job of sending that message. And the idea that you're sitting a kid on a desk on the track or on the football field or on the sideline is just amazing, and the successful places. Because
Well, and
guess what? We had the same thing, you know.
right when you told me that years ago
Yeah.
about that, we started that.
Yeah. Oh,
And
did you do that at Pioneer?
And every time the kids brought grade checks came due,
Oh,
and we did them every 3 weeks,
yeah.
during the season.
So you can get
And
15 in a month.
yeah, well, and it was the kids would come running, I got
Right.
A's, coach. Look, I got A's, coach. Oh wait, I gotta go get Mrs. So and so because she didn't sign mine. She wasn't here yesterday, but I got
an
an
89.
And they'd go running around, and that was, but to those kids, for those kids to have stickers on their helmets, they weren't going to score a touchdown, or they weren't going to be over 100 yards rushing the football, or making 10 tackles, or any of those things that the rest of them got them for. And what a great idea that was. I was so,
cool.
when you told me that, and I went, yeah, man, I had no idea. I had no realization of how it was going to make them feel. I knew they'd be fired up, but even some of the knuckleheads, had 1A, and they were like so happy and excited. To get that sticker on their helmet. And and it's, again, I learned on the way, and I'm sure a lot of other coaches have as well, and it's not unique to me or you or whatever, but there's no getting over the fact that the kid who's disciplined enough to be able to put in the time in the classroom, around and amongst all the football work and the time, or whatever sport, and the work that they put in, is those are the kind of kids that are going to be successful on the field. They're going to make a play when the chips are down, and they're going to find a way, because they're not going to be too tired. They're going to be okay to make that play, and that extra work and that extra time is not unbeknownst to them. And not only that, but then they're able to handle the college level stuff, and those are things we have a lot of excitement and pride for, because those kids are a joy to know that they had got something out of the game that they wouldn't have, because they worked hard at something, and they showed up for practice every day.
The last thing I wanted to do is get up for Happy Valley, which, for everyone out there who doesn't know what that is, that's earlier than zero period weightlifting if you're in another sport. So you could be playing baseball, but that doesn't mean you get out of weight room. You got to go to the weight room before zero period, which was freaking early for a guy like me. I mean, I was, and, and it was natural for me to search for motivation. And to get that, I needed to ask some questions. And, I never really had any issues with adults. Like, I could just ask. I don't get too intimidated with that. And even as a young man, I was probably way too brash. I felt like I was respectful, and I asked people, and they're like, oh yeah, you got to know how to do this, because you got to be able to get up and, you got to be able to do this in your life. You got to answer the bell. If that means you're going to go make some money, you got to get up. If that means I always use if your kid is sick at 2:00 at night, you're not going to roll over. You're going to get up. You're going to answer the bell, get off the mat. And
you're going to go to work and every day. I mean, even when you don't feel like it, and those kind of things. So
I was a little surfer, little stoner, Hessian freaking kid, like I said, a heathen. And when one of the parts of the dress code, and if I told you the story, we can move on, but one of the parts of our dress code was wearing a belt, and I did not own a belt. I was wearing OP shorts every day that had elastic on them. I did not need a belt. And I did not have a belt. And I tucked my shirt in, and I was skinny, so I didn't have the old muffin top to hide the fact that I didn't have a belt. And I got flagged over by Mr. Mendaka, and he was pissed. He's like, okay, here's another clown. Who's this guy? And he's like, hey man, where's your belt? I said, I don't have a belt. And he thought I was being a smart ass. What kind of asshole doesn't have a belt? He didn't say that, but you could read the room. I was looking at him eye to eye. And he says, well, okay, wise guy, if you don't have a belt tomorrow, you're going to get Saturday detention. I said, okay, yeah, no problem. I went home and I told my mom, hey, listen, man, I need a belt, And she goes, I don't get paid till Friday, Tom. I don't know what to do. We can call Grandpa Buddy, but his belt's a 36, and I'm a 26 probably at that time. And so I go, okay, Pop, don't worry, Mom. I'll just use my football belt. So I have slacks, a collared shirt, button shirt, slacks, shirt tucked in, and I'm wearing a sweaty ass double D ring, filthy white cotton football belt. Nasty, still wet from practice yesterday, right? But
I've been meaning to talk to you about your style, okay, Tommy. That's great.
Oh, that's hysterical. So I go to school that way, and I'm kind of into solving the problems, and I'm relatively proud of myself. I'm like, okay, my mom promised me she's going to get me a belt on Friday, but for now, I'm not going to get Saturday detention on this bullshit, because I've seen the guys Saturday detention scraping up gum and stuff. I'm like, I ain't doing that. So I guess, Hank was looking out for me, and I wasn't trying to avoid him. I just going about my business and chasing skirt or whatever. And he hit and pulled me over, and he's like, come into my office. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know that we're going to set this thing off right now. And he sat me down, and he kind of, he gave me the, are you mocking me concept? That's not how it went, but are you mocking me? What is this? Are you some kind of clown? This is not how we roll here.
Well, that comes from a guy that was dressed to the nines and drove around in his Porsche every day. And
the Rolex watch, I couldn't get my eyes. I could not get my eyes off his watch, Chuck. Right. And he was wearing he always wore Ray-Ban glasses, man. Just bitching glasses, man.
Yeah.
I have Ray-Bans to this day, probably because of him. But and yeah, he was nuts, and I wasn't sloppy. I just had this goofy ass belt on, and he thought I was fucking with him, which, looking back, I can see how that might be the case. And I finally just kind of told him, I'm like, look, man, I don't have a belt, bro. I could have tied a string around my waist. My mom promised to get me a goddamn belt. I probably cursed a little bit. I said, my mom's going to get me a belt on Friday. What do you want me to do? If you want me to come to freaking Saturday detention, I don't care, but it ain't going to change. I'm not going to have a belt on Thursday, bud. I don't care what you say. There's nothing you can do. And he went, and then he, it was one of those, the teacher learns a lesson from the kid. He went, are you serious?
Moments.
Yeah. He goes, are you serious, Tom? I said, yeah, man. I go, I promise you I'll have a belt. And, and I didn't go to my coach and ask for a belt. I could have done that. There was other options that I could have done. I could ask my friends what would have been, maybe they would have made fun of me. I don't know. I was just a heathen. And from, kind of from that moment on, we were like, when he found out that I was a real guy and not just a geek. Oh, and then week 3, 4, and 5 happened, and then he walks out and goes, "Who's the best player?" And okay, then it all started to go. Okay, yeah, Tom is going to be one of my guys, and when I need intel, I'm going to talk to Tom, and when I need to, and by intel I mean, what's the vibe on campus, not who's fucking right. Up. He wanted to know, he wanted to keep it. I was this guy, and anytime I wanted to go sit, anytime I needed a break from class, I would say, can I please go to Mr. Mendaka's office? And I would go sit in his office. He would be on the phone, and I would just be sitting there looking at all. Do you remember, did he have the glass on his desk with all the paper clippings from the 81 team? Did he have that when you were there? Was he even a dean when you were there?
No, because I wasn't there till after. I was before the 81.
Before the 81. And I would just sit in there, look at Joe Pena's picture and all that stuff on the 81 team. And I would just read the clippings, and I would be very like a church mouse. And he'd be, "Are you good?" And sometimes he would just say, "Are you good?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And okay, see you later. And he'd write me a pass, and I'd go back to class. The teachers must have thought I was in trouble all the time, but
well, it just goes to show you. I think the lesson of the story.
He was a human.
And you try to do your best to solve the problems, man, and you be straight with people and let them know.
I didn't lie.
There's a certain amount of how would he have ever known? He deals with smart ass goofballs who just don't want to wear a belt every single day. And unless you again, showed him that realness and those kind of stories are the stories that, again, help me to coach kids to do those kind of things, because I know those stories are the stories that stick with them throughout their lives, and
it's a fine line, because I want to win so much. And as a male role model for those kids, I want to win so much. But I also want them to have that experience that I had, where it made a difference. Because I know for some kids, they're never going to play again. Even if it's just their freshman year, they're never going to play again. Those guys in the senior year, I go, man, this is your last game, bro. You're never going to strap it up, and I just like, are you still going to be successful? Are we able to teach those lessons simply by winning and the processes that make you a winner? Or do we have to build in these teachable moments, or do we have to pause and say, all right, what do you guys think about this? Look at this. What do you see here? Is this how you want to be? What does that look like? Even if it's showing a 30-second video of the fucking Capitol, and people just desecrating that situation and not being concerned. And, hey, I don't want to talk about the politics. I don't care why the people are here. Is this the right way? Is
Right.
this what they're talking about? Is this what Martin Luther King was talking about? Is this what
Yeah.
Gandhi
Well, and
was?
that's the beauty of it, Tom. You were having trouble saying I'm not sure whether you thought I was just a smart ass or I
Yeah,
was that
yeah.
guy, but well, because you always appeared mature,
Mm,
and I mean, if I had to explain what was the underlying um, character trait that you had when I got to know you as a
right.
player is you seemed more mature than the average high school student, and that was your forthcomingness and your ability to speak up, and you kind of had you were not a shy guy in terms of speaking up for yourself, but it never really appeared. I mean, other than my general
Right.
intolerance for everybody. I never thought that you were trying
No,
to.
I would talk back. I would challenge, but I mean, yeah.
But anyway, let's take a
I
break for a
love that
second.
though. Coach, I love those kids. I love the fucking kids that'll be like, fuck you, coach. And I'm like, all right, okay, all right, we got to do this in a different way, but I like your fucking spirit. And I
The
know it's such a betrayal to those
the
kids on
best
the
thing the
sideline.
best thing I ever did in terms of the best thing I ever did in terms of learning more about coaching and being a better coach was to be really clear that it's a yes or no sir program, meaning you
Yeah.
can when we're on the football field, it's yes sir, I understand and I will do better, or no sir, I don't understand, could you explain it to me again?
Yeah.
But then when we got out the field, you can come in and sit down with me and say to me,
Hash it
fuck
out.
you, coach, I'm pissed. I'm fucking tired of this shit. You fucking talk to whatever it is, and I had to prove that with certain kids that was really the way it was going to go, because again, they're a little scared of you and a little respectful of you, and a
Yeah.
combination of everything, but
Yeah.
you turn them loose, whenever they had issues, and it stuck to where, boy, we just never got hung up on shit ever again. They
Right.
would come in and they would vent,
Right.
and they'd say, I'm fucking tired of my mom, and we'd go
Yeah.
through that kind of stuff, and
You're
then
being unfair.
pretty soon it would, oh, okay, thanks for explaining that to me, I understand, or thanks for listening, because
Right.
I learned a long time ago, and I wish I knew this back whenever I was married, and you know had
You
an
don't have to
opportunity
fix everybody's.
to show a little bit more insight, but the ability just to listen is way underrated. One of my biggest things that I learned in life was, you know, listen to understand, and then speak to be understood.
Right.
But if you're not
Ooh, I like
always
that.
if you're
Deep.
not always waiting for the um, I'm just listening to you just so that I can retort, you know, and instead of listening to you to try to understand you, and again, we talked about this earlier, is understanding where somebody's coming from is as important or way more important than being right, because
Right.
my right is not necessarily going to fit into your scenario of what we're talking about or what we're dealing with, and your reality has got to be important to me. So that
Right.
listening factor, and when you just sit there and listen to kids, and then they get done talking, and there would be that awkward moment of silence, and I'd say, what can I do for you? What else can I
Right.
do? No, that's it, coach, thanks, I just appreciate you listening. And
It's
they'd go
killer,
off,
huh?
and
So
they'd be,
killer.
and it didn't take anything but time, and it never took more than 30 minutes, of time, because
Yeah.
kids, don't usually have that much to talk about, and but one of the greatest assets that I ever developed was that ability to understand that, and the kids, responded to that, and again, then learned, and were a little more patient with, teammates, and things like that, and would
Yeah.
stand up for you whenever other guys were bitching and moaning and complaining in the locker room, and they
Yeah.
go, don't worry, coach, we got that shit.
Right.
I'd go freaking walk into the locker room, I go, where's Johnny? Don't worry, coach, they got him,
Right.
we're all right, okay, you walk
And,
out.
what I love about that whole thing, I can't. I'm just stuck on. I'm just stuck on how much you have done for those kids with that yes or no, sir. Because I was just talking to a young man that's in the Marine Corps the other day, and he said, you know, when you get pulled over for a ticket, you don't fight the ticket there. You fight it in the courtroom. You just sign the ticket. Thank you, sir. Let me just be clear on what I'm getting a ticket for, and that's it. It is not time to say, well, I didn't do that. It's not time to say, well, blah, blah, blah. What are you, some kind of idiot? And then, it's not time to escalate.
Yeah.
And your ability to kind of work that in and say, guess what? We got 30 more minutes of practice, including conditioning, before we can get to that point where you can unload. Right now, it's just yes or no, sir, and we're gonna
Yeah.
keep rolling. And
Yeah.
it seems it's a way to um, be unselfish. You have to put your team and their learning ahead of yours, even if you're not going to learn anymore because your brain is fried because you're emotional. At least the rest of your team isn't. You're not going to take away the coach from the rest of the team. Number one.
Yeah.
Delay gratification. Number two. And at some point in that 30 minutes, you'll have a deep breath there somewhere. You'll sigh and you'll get it run out of you.
Exactly. Well, and you had to prove it. You
Yeah.
had to prove it. If you went in and were intolerant, or you wanted to talk over them and tell them, again, it was that thing. I got a few kids that if all you'd have to do, I'd say, Tom, go ask him about this deal, and walk up to that kid and go, do you want to win or do you want to be right?
Right.
And they'd put their head down and they'd go, I want to win. I said, then you gotta suck it up.
Yeah.
I know you feel like you're right. I know you want to be right, and I know you probably think that guy's wrong.
Yeah.
But this is how we're going to handle it. So it's it's one of those things where you develop it's developing a program that has certain buzzwords that can move kids from A to Z really fast. Otherwise, you're caught dealing with a lot of that stuff, and it takes an enormous amount of time. So